Hey guys, I'm Neil Barenblatt with Creative Cow. Welcome to the super awesome graphic intro news tutorial. I think I'm a little bit better lit here, if I may say so myself. But yeah, so this is part one. So part one is going to be total 3D. We're going to look at the text at the cube right there that has the world on it. We're going to see what techniques are used to make those. And in the second part, we're going to look at everything in After Effects. So there's lots of techniques to go around in both areas of interest. So let's just jump right in and see what we got going with this news tutorial. So the first thing that we're going to have to do is create this here cube. And don't worry, I'm going to create it from scratch, but I just want to show you exactly what we're going to be doing. So that's what we need. That's the result. We render it. Yippity yay. So in our new project, what we're going to do is start out by making a cube. And we'll just kind of size it down to whatever size we need. So that looks, I mean, that's working pretty well for me. All right, so after we get it there and how we need it, you know, the size and dimensions and all that kind of stuff, which, you know, to do that you just pull in these handles, right? I mean, you could come over here to the size stuff right there, but this is so much more dynamic. So that's the way we're going to do it. After that, what we want to do to achieve this kind of look where we have these beveled edges is doing that by filleting the edges, or filleting, as I say when I'm hungry. So by clicking fillet, we automatically get these crazy beveled edges that we really just don't need quite that much. So we're just going to turn the radius down to something like that. Probably keep the subdivisions to 5. That works by me. And yeah, I think for right now we're gonna be able to change that later. So I think that's gonna be cool. So around 8. All right, maybe make it a little bit taller. Why not? Because what we do want is for it to come off the screen like that and then rotate. So let's rotate it right now while we can. Let's say we want it to rotate over the course of 120 frames. Sounds good to me. That's what we'll use. So start it at 0 and just make sure you have it clicked and change to rotate, or press R. You can go between all of those by pressing E, R, and T, T being scale, R of course being rotate, and E being move, because that's apparently how you spell move, first letter. So after you are ready to rotate, just press the keyframe thing right here and go to frame 120, and we can either, you know, kind of sloppily rotate it around like this, which is fine, or if you kind of have a good bearing on what you want it to be rotated as, just move around this number right here. So I'll do something pretty, you know, just to have a solid number. I'll pick 500, and then keyframe again. And so if we go back and play, now we have that animation. It's a little fast, so I can go and make it maybe 400, see if I like that better. Keyframe it again. And it's just a little too fast still. So let's put it at 325 and keyframe it again. And yeah, I'm going to stick with that. Okay, cool. So the next thing we need to do while we look at it is notice that it actually eases into animation by default and eases out by default in Cinema 4D. And we don't necessarily need that. So what we're going to do is go to Cinema 4D's F-curve editor, animation curve editor, whatever you want to call it, and sort of screw with that. And to do that, you either go up to the window timeline, or I have it tabbed down here. So you go to the timeline, and then when you're looking at your objects down here, you can click on cube. And there's a few ways to look at this. Since all we want is a straight animation, we can just right-click on one of the keyframes on the cube and say, make me linear. But just to show you a little more about this curve system, I'll go a little more in depth to where you could really control the curve if you wanted to. So over here, you have a few options. And this is for just basic keyframes like we see here. But this option right here that looks like a little heart attack dial is actually the curve editor. So if I click on cube now, we can see our entire curve of rotation right there. And you can actually, let's say you had animation of more than one property, you could look at everything's individual curve. But we're just going to look at this rotation curve. And if, you know, if your heart so desired, you could manually curve these things just how you wanted. If you're familiar with the After Effects curve editor, same exact thing. Okay, just like that. I'm curving the wrong thing. Don't want to do that. So since this is, you know, I don't really need this at all, I'm just going to go back to the rotation right here and just say make me linear. Cool. So now when we play it, perfect. Linear animation, none of that funky business, all awesome stuff. So why don't we texture it so we can get this to look halfway decent. So let's make a new material, file, new material, double click on it. And we want this glassy, you know, refracty, awesome, weird material. So we're going to make that by first clicking on transparency. And we can see right here it makes that completely transparent, as the name so suggests, especially if you turned off the specular. But we actually want to play with this a little bit. So refraction is actually the distortion of light that goes through objects, and glass happens to be something that we very much notice this with. So glass, I believe, has a refraction of either 1.2 or 1.5, and I'm just going to use 1.2. And so that's the sort of distortion that happens. That's what I'm talking about. Light actually bends because of the atoms in the object or something like that. I just read about it, but I really don't remember many things that I read, which kind of sucks. So, you know, I'm like 90 in a 24-year-old body. So yeah, we have that refraction now, so that's kind of cool. Not much else we need to do here. So we can move on to specular, and let's bump this thing up. Let's bump up the height so we have some good looking spots. And I think also in reflectivity, or reflection as they call it, we can, you know, I get like the inner feeling that this will make it kind of reflect on itself and get a cool vibe. I don't really know if that's true, but since that's what I did and that's how it came out, that's what we're going to do. So we're going to give it a Fresnel reflection, and bada bing, bada boom. So let's see what that looks like when you render it. Doesn't look much like anything because we never applied the texture. So let's just drag this onto the object and render, and voila, glass. But if we take a light and move the light over a little bit, like so, now we're getting exactly what we want. Something pretty interesting. And just looking at this right now, or actually, I'll show you this in a second. First, so we can move around, let's make a camera. So click on the light, hold it, and find your camera. And then just click on the white and then click on it again. So when we zoom out by holding down 2 and moving our mouse, the camera doesn't move. I know this is the shot I want, so I can always revert back to it. But let me show you something interesting I just noticed. So look right here on the edges of our cube when I render. You will very quickly notice all this jaggedy crap going on, and we're high quality here. We can't have that. So we gonna change that. We gonna show you something you ain't never seen before. To quote a movie that, well, comment below and tell me if you know a movie that is. You should. I've never seen it, but apparently I've seen enough. So the way we're going to fix that is actually to turn the anti-aliasing up, because it is aliased. So let's change this from geometry to best and still image to animation, since it is going to animate. And we'll just bring the minimum level up to about 2x2. So now when we render, much better. I guess if you just keep bringing it up, well, there you go. More render time, not enough good result to vouch for it, you know, whatever. So let's go back to our camera view, and that is leagues better. That is so much better. Let me show you the difference again. Let me get a good shot. So let's turn anti-aliasing off back to geometry. Oh, look at all that crap. Can't have that. So redo it. Oh yeah, it's so much better. Okay, cool. And as we move around, we can see our light is doing some cool stuff to it. Frankly, well, we'll get there when we get there. So yeah, stuff like that. That's the kind of stuff I want. If we have to, go back in the texture and if we go to specular, make it a little wider, then we'll get even more of that. So yeah, I think that's more of what I'm looking for. Now the next thing I want to do is get that earth on there because that's very, very important. And the earth is actually a texture that I have. So we're going to make a new material and find said texture. Now the way we want to do this is, the way I'm going to do this is actually just make this a black color and then throw it onto our cube. Okay. So obviously that's not how we want it to look. So we're going to control the alpha of this black using a black and white matte of the earth that I already have. So if we click on alpha and then go to our image opener, you can see right there I have earth black on trans, no borders. So that means no borders. I got rid of these clouds, or they're non-apparent in this version of the image. And we have exactly what we want. So let's open that. No, don't care. And now we can see that our world is horribly showing up on our cube. So what we need to do is resize the texture in the texture attributes. And so you can see right here, if you click on the texture, you don't really have that option. So where would that option be hiding if you were that option? I'll tell you where. Over here in the objects editor. So crazy, you guys. So crazy. So click on the texture tag in the objects editor, and now you can see you have all these transform properties. We're going to keep it as UVW mapping and just sort of re-stretch these things so we get the world how we want it looking. So let's do that. And right now you can see it's tiling things over and over again. Uncheck that. Beautiful. And let's offset this so it's lower in the cube. And it's starting to get how we want it to look. Cool, cool. Awesomeness, awesomeness. All right, let's spin the wheel. You know what? For right now, that's close enough. I think it's a little too stretched, so we'll do that. Yeah, I think that's going to work. Because when we spin it, sweetness. Now, let's render and see what it looks like. Cool. That's exactly what I want. Except for one freaking thing. And that freaking thing is, if you look at the top, we got another world up there. You render it, you see it. It's not, it's pretty clear. And that needs to be gotten rid of. Frankly, I mean, it's just poor taste and rude, if you ask me. So we're going to get rid of that world. And the way we're going to do that is actually to set selections for our textures. And what you do is you select polygons and you say, hey, on this polygon only use this texture, or don't use this texture. So that's exactly what we're going to do. And the first thing that we have to do in order to do that, wow, lots of do's in that sentence, is to make this cube editable, which you can do over here with this button right yonder, or you can just press C, doesn't really matter. But so now it's editable. And you can see if we go into polygon mode and use our pointer tool, we can select any of these polygons. So we are going to get out of our camera, get out of our head for a minute. And it's on the bottom too, but we're not really concerned with the bottom, so I'm just going to leave it alone. And we're going to click the top polygon right there. Make sure you have only select visible elements selected, otherwise you're going to end up selecting other polygons that you don't want. And we're going to, while it's selected, click on selection, set selection, and name it top. So what that did is in your cube, it created this triangular icon that refers to this top polygon. So if you clicked out and you went back to this triangle and said, select polygons, there it is again. Fully selected, top of the line technology, good stuff. So right now, both of these textures are applied to the entirety of the cube. But if I take this and throw this on there, the top selection into the material, and we go back, let's see what happened. Okay, so what happened is now this material is only reserved for the selection. So what I want to do is actually copy and paste this material like so. So we have two copies of it, and not the object, no sir. I guess the easiest way to do this is to actually control click on the material and just drag it, and that actually copies it. So what we're going to do is, that's absolutely fine, and in this original one we're going to delete top. So now when we render, oh, look at that, not on the top but everywhere else, because this is actually working in a hierarchy. Whatever is more to the right is what takes precedence. So it makes total sense. So this original texture is taking over the whole body of this cube. This map is taking over only the alpha that we set it to, and this is taking over only this selection, because that's what we have it as. The selection for this texture is top, while the selection for this texture is by default everything. So now when we render this, we get exactly what we want. This is it. This is the end of the world, of creating the world. So go ahead, make your render settings however you need them, render that out. Probably, PNG sequence, TIFF sequence, whatever you want. And let's move on to how to make the words do that thing they do. So let's make a new project, and I'm just going to make a MoGraph text object, and under object I'm just going to name it Super Awesome News. Here's the thing, I already have rendered out what I want, so I can do anything I feel like here, and I typed in like violent news or something because all news is violent and whatnot. So I thought it'd be ironic and funny when it's probably not. But yeah, so right now I'm just going to type super awesome news. And actually I'm going to split these up. So I'm going to type super and then awesome and news. But before I do that, because there's a good thing to know here is, especially in cases like this when you have multiple pieces of text, if you look right now it says super here, but there's no reference to that over here. So if we had, like we're going to have a few text objects, we're going to get confused unless we start renaming them all super blah 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 blah, and that's just going to get obnoxious the more text objects you have. So a really cool useful technique right here, which I know I've explained in some other tutorials I've done before, is to use Xpresso to make your life easier. So if you right click on the object and go to Cinema 4D tags and down to Xpresso and drag 2 copies of your object tag down there, now what we can do is, and don't let Xpresso scare you, it's a node based system, but if you just watch what I do, it's so much easier than you think. Basically we're going to connect these two things together. We're going to take the property of the whatever you type in from this object and say, hey, make that the name. So name it whatever you type in. And so the way you do that is you just click on the out port and find object properties and find text, and then on this one, the input, you find basic properties name. Connect the two. Bam! Super, super. Thanks for asking. Let's make this all caps. It will also update up there. Maybe, I don't know, some font besides that. Again, doesn't really matter because I already rendered out what I want. Denovis kind of cool. Okay, I can deal with that. And actually, before I copy these also, we're going to texture this one because they're all going to be roughly the same. So right now we have some pretty plain text, but what I can do is cap it with a fillet cap, and change the fillet type to like 2 steps or something like that. Whatever you want. 1 step, make the radius a little bigger. That's kind of cool. I don't think it's exactly what I had last time, but I'm liking it. I think I just had convex last time, which is fine, but I'm going to do 1 step because I think it's cool. So yeah, we have that now, and basically it's just a matter of texturing, but there's a really cool thing to know when texturing with MoGraph text, and here's what I'm going to show you. So I want the front to be white, the front of the letters to be white, and this fillet to be gold. And actually, you can see while we're looking right here, we get a little distortion. And that can actually be solved by fillet capping the other end of the text, and lo and behold, I lied. So if you have distortion like so and you render it, it doesn't actually render, so don't even worry about it. But for the texture, back to that, after making, you know, a fool of myself, we're going to create a white texture and a gold texture. So new material, and let's bring this up to white, and then another new material, which you can see that I just did. You can also make these by just double clicking in the empty materials field, and we'll make the color, you know, kind of a goldish color, and turn reflection on pretty high, and some good specular. That's about it for now. So the way that MoGraph text works is it actually has predetermined selections for applying textures to. For instance, if I drag this white onto super, it's going to turn everything white. But if I say make the selection cap 1, C1 for cap 1, and then I take the gold and make the selection R1 for, I don't know what it stands for, but it makes the fillet that color. So now when we render, bam, that's what you get. And I also want to make whatever my 3D-ness, the extrusion of the super gold, so I'm going to drag another copy of the gold over and bring it over to the left so it's the hierarchy works. And now when I make this, you know, bigger, extrude it by going to the object tab and making the depth that much more awesome. You can't see it because it's not lit, but it's going to be gold. Let's light it and see what I'm talking about. You can already see it from right there. We're getting some good goldness. So let's bring that over there. We're just going to throw a few lights around and see what looks good. We obviously need, excuse me, a light in front to light the super, thanks for asking, just like so. And maybe drag this over to the side to give this a little light, and maybe we'll copy that light, you know, just Control C, Control V, and bring this over there, bring the intensity down, probably bring the intensity down over here too, just to balance things out and even further. Let's render that and see what it looks like. That's looking pretty good. Definitely not digging the 1 step anymore. So let's go back to the caps and make it just convex. See if I like that a little better. Yeah, I think just because it's getting some more interesting results for gold. I don't know. I just feel like it is. So that's what we're going to stick with. You know, probably want to play around with lighting a little more than I did. There's actually something else you can do, and I will offer this in this tutorial as a project file. You can either use Grayscale Gorilla's light kit to light this thing, which makes it a lot better, or I actually created my own version of it, my own softbox, very similar to his, but sort of figured it out on my own just to learn from. And so I use that a lot. And so that's what I'm actually going to use here to show you the difference in the lighting. So instead of deleting these, actually, let me just turn them off. And I'm going to paste that light from the other project. So just off the bat, when we render, we get these crazy awesome results. And it looks much more like this very organic gold. And so if we zoom out of the project, you can see my softbox right here. and we can rotate it, and it rotates around the center of the world. And let's bring it up right about there. Now it does increase render times a lot because there's a lot of area light things going on in there. But if we render this right here, oh, that looks so much better. So let's make another copy of that and bring it on the other side of the world of the letters. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And we can play with some of the settings I have in here for the softbox. I think this one, the second one, needs to be significantly less intense. And there's a few ways you can do that. You can either lower the intensity, you can scale it up, which will decrease the intensity because it takes the concentration of light and spreads it. And, you know, if you want to put a blocker on for something to reflect, so for instance, you can put a grate, and so now when you render it, that grate shows up in the reflection, but it's not really necessary. And I think we should make it a little brighter, so make those smaller again. Yeah, now that's looking kind of cool. My only beef right now is that you know, maybe it's just not bright enough, but the gold is so dark and kind of depressing. So let's turn that reflection, that brightness back up. Maybe turn the color of the whole thing just up, the brightness. Try rendering that again. This takes a lot of playing and a lot of different lighting. Sometimes you can even incorporate these lights in to get what you want. Not saying, well, you know, it could help, but again, it could not. So, play around with those light settings. I know you'll get what you want, but this is the basic way to do it. So yeah, and this is going to look pretty good, and you're going to be able to adjust the brightness of this thing in After Effects anyway. So we're going to hold on to that right now. I mean, you know, we can see in my original what it looked like. You know, that's pretty close lighting to what we have in our comp over here in Untitled 3. So let's just make the rest of the words now and then animate them. So let's copy and paste super by Control-C, Control-V. We can move it down, and because we already have that espresso tag on it, if we just rename it to awesome, it's going to rename up there too. And we definitely need it to be significantly smaller. If we go to our 4 views, we can kind of line things up just like that. And perfect, perfect, awesome, super awesome. And we'll just copy that one more time and write news and make it big so it fits. I think that's cool how that fits just like that. Gonna have some pretty deep rendering times, but if we go ahead and press render, it looks pretty cool. Everything's reflecting off of each other. Everyone's happy. We got these really very real shadows. Yeah, I'm liking how that looks. A little messy word spacing due to this font. I guess you'll just have to use a different font. I really like how this looks. I like how this looks more than Violent News. I may just render this out and use it, but I probably won't. I'll probably just use Violent News, but whatever. But this looks good. So let's animate it and get it ready for render. And then we'll be done with all this 3D mess. So the way we're going to animate it is by using the plane effector in MoGraph, because these are all MoGraph pieces of text. And we're going to use a different plane effector for every one of these. And I'll show you how it's done. It's actually a mix between the plane effector and the delay effector. So let's make sure super is clicked and go up to MoGraph, or I have my thing windowed in here. So we'll just actually scroll down and find plane effector. And we'll click it, and off the bat, it sort of raises it a little bit because by default, the position is, you know, positive by 100 meters. So let's make that 0 and actually bring it over here in the Z direction because that's where I want it to come from. And the way this works is right now, this is the plane effector right here, and it is set to an infinite fall off. So no matter where you place this thing, your letters will react to this. But in reality, your letters are still technically here and reacting to this box. But you bring the box into context. I know I'm explaining it a little weird, but you bring this box into context by making the fall off no longer infinite, by making it a finite thing, which you do in the fall off tab under plane effector, and you can make it the shape of your box. So now you can see that only the area of the box is affecting our MoGraph object. So if we make it as long as the word itself and then move it like that, that's what happens. And so now it's clear that we need a little more space in our parameters. So let's keep moving it back in Z space. Perfect. So now when we do it, we get the animation we're looking for. So to try and make this a little clearer, you take the plane effector, which is a box, not to be confused with plane, and you basically say, make this fall off, make the letters react to a finite object as defined by the plane effector. So right now, the letters, like when you move the plane effector away, they're no longer affected by the plane effector. They're no longer in this Z position, and they animate to that. So what we're going to do is animate this plane effector so they all come into view. Let's make this about 300 frames. And over the course of our first 80 frames, we are going to keyframe just the regular old position of the plane effector. So let's press a key at frame 0 and go to frame 80 and bring it all the way over so the whole word super is in view, and keyframe it again. So now when we go back and play, bam, super comes into view letter by letter, because that's how the plane effector is splitting things up. And the way how you can see if that works is you go to the word super and see that in letters, that is where the plane effector is doing its thing. So, but right now, if we watch that, it's pretty harsh animation. I mean, it's like, bam, like S-U-P-E-R. And that's not what we want. We want an S-U-P-E-R. Okay? So we're going to make that happen. And the way we do that is by actually adding a delay effector to the word. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to go down to delay effector. And by default, it is set on blend. I believe that is what we want. So now when we play, you can see it's just a little bit smoother. You can actually smoothen that up by just increasing the strength of the delay effector. Now watch. Oh, it didn't do anything. Too much. So let's bring it down to about 75 and see what happens. Oh, it's so much smoother. Keep bringing it up just enough to where we don't ruin the whole thing. Yeah, it's getting better. Keep bringing it up. Even better. We want it to be as soft as possible. I don't know why it didn't happen at 100. Let's try it again. 100. That's just too much. So bring it down to about, apparently 94 is okay. So yeah, that's the animation we're looking for. You know, if you don't like it, make it lower. But that's what I want. So we're actually going to just copy the plane effector twice. The delay effector we're just going to apply to everything. But we need different plane effectors. So because we need, we need the same plane effector, but we need different animations. So we're going to take the plane effector 1 animation and just move the keyframes over. And the way you do that is just hold your mouse on the bottom of the timeline right there and just drag over all your keyframes until this thing turns them orange. Then just drag anywhere on that gray piece and move everything over. So we'll move everything over 40 frames. 50. Cool. And we will also go into the timeline and move the Y position so it is, we don't even have to do that. We're just going to make it taller. So we're going to increase the Y size of the plane effector. And in Awesome, under letters, this is why I showed you what's actually affecting the MoGraph. We're going to drag plane effector 1 in there. So now when we play our animation, super comes on, then Awesome, really harsh, add your delay effector, and bam. Beautiful letters. I think it happens a little too late, so we can actually just go to the plane effector again. Our stuff is still selected, so just move it over. Let's make it about half that delay. So now when we play our animation, yeah. And even sooner after that, I think we should make the plane effector 2. So let's do the same thing with plane effector 2. Let's move all of our keyframes over. The other one started at 25. Let's start this at 40 and make the size of the Y much bigger, just like the other one, so it envelops awesome. I believe it does, or news, sorry. And drag it into the newsletter MoGraph effectors, as well as the delay effector, of course. So now, when we go play this thing, oh, beautiful. Move our camera down a little bit. And I actually do have the softbox set up to where it will not render with your comp. So let's play that again and make sure it's how we want it. Perfect. This looks great. I'm loving it. Set your render. Get it going. It's going to take a little bit. Go grab a coffee with a friend if you have one. If you don't, grab it by yourself and cry. But, you know, these are the titles, and the other thing was the cube. This is the 3D for the comp. Alright guys, so thanks for watching this 3D part. Stay tuned for the next part, compositing all of this in After Effects. It's going to be really awesome. Lots of cool things to learn. I'm Neil Barenblatt with Creative Cal. See you next time.